Today on Relationship Renovation podcast, we had such a great time talking to Kelly Smith. She's a podcaster, she's an author, she has Yoga for You and Mindful in Minutes.
But meditation and mindfulness teaches us this intentional introspection. You are never going to find your true self looking outward. It isn't out there, it's inward.
We dig deep today into how mindfulness can help you connect with your authentic self.
I'll give you a little hack. Tell yourself that if you do the meditation first, you're going to be more productive for the rest of the day.
Make you happier, make you feel more joyful, and connect more deeply with your partner.
Maybe you're feeling a little bit unhappy because you don't know what actually makes you happy.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin, and we're super excited. We want to just plunge right into this because we were lucky enough to have Kelly Smith from Yoga for You. She's a podcaster. She's an author. She is a coach, a mindfulness coach. She was on not too long ago, just a month or so ago. And we felt like we just scratched the surface with her around mindfulness, how it connects to relationship, how it connects to being a mother and being partners in this world. And so we wanted to just jump in a little bit deeper. And Tarah, you had a topic that you were like, hey, let's go in a little bit deeper on this.
Well, I think, yes, when we talked to Kelly last time, the idea of that when you get into relationship, a lot of people feel like they lose themselves to stress, to parenting, to work, to each other. And then this, the idea of using mindfulness to become your authentic self for you so that you can be your best in the relationship. I was like, I need to dive into that. That would be beautiful. I know Kelly loves doing that work. And so I thought, why not go into how to become an authentic self through mindfulness meditation so that you can be who you are supposed to be in a relationship and not feel so bogged down by all the stresses of life that most of us do.
So welcome back, Kelly Smith. How are you today, Kelly?
I am so good. I've been looking forward to this all day because the last time we spoke, I feel like I almost got this little mini therapy session from two incredible professionals thinking, I had such a great time last time and I learned so much. So I'm excited to chat again.
Yeah, I listened to it again this morning before we recorded just so I could kind of dive back in. And we talked a lot about resentment. We talked a lot about specifically around when you have a kid and that sort of separation, but really just breaking down the anatomy of how resentment builds. And then you offered just some amazing tools in using mindfulness to understand it and get to a more vulnerable place. So if anyone hasn't heard that episode, after you check out this one, check out our first episode with Kelly.
And can I just share, I now have this new weekly routine where on Fridays I do hot yoga with my girlfriends. Then I come home and I listen to one of Kelly's meditations. And now my cats are flocking to me because something about the mindful
What's your
brain.
favorite one? So if somebody hasn't listened to one of Kelly's meditations, which one do you love?
So the one I liked, which is probably longer than normal ones, because I know you do, was the Yoga Nidra one because it got me so into my body from head to toe. And breathing, and it slowed down. And it was exactly what I needed because I need more than just 5 minutes sometimes on a Friday night. So mine was the Yoga Nidra, but I'll let you know as I continue my weekly Fridays.
All right. So Kelly, maybe you can kick us off on this mindfulness and finding a connection to your more authentic self.
Yeah, actually, Tarah, I'm thrilled that you brought up Yoga Nidra because I want to talk about that as well, because there's kind of these two pieces when we're thinking about, and you can call this whatever you want to call it. I always tell people, insert your word here, truest self, most authentic self, living from your soul space, whatever you personally believe, you can insert that in here. We're talking about that, your essence in a way, the part of you, I know not everyone listening is a parent, but just think about a child that and those kids, they are just their most authentic selves.
Yeah.
Think about like a toddler you've ever met. Like they are just their most authentic selves. And there's something that happens along the way where, life shapes us, changes us, hardens us, tell us we should be that way. We shouldn't be that way. We get influenced by our peers, by, what we see and consume, all of this. And we start to drift farther and farther away. For many of us, not all of us, but we start to drift farther and farther away from that truest, most authentic, just pure essence that we're born with as a person. And for many of us, I hear in my work, we feel disconnected from this space. We feel like we don't know ourselves, or we want to get to know ourselves again, or we want to either rediscover or possibly discover for the first time, like, who am I? What is my truest, most authentic self? And this is something that, like, if I could give a gift to everyone in the world, it would be like a connection with their true self. Because I think it's really the secret to living a fulfilling life and a happy life is living from that like soul space, that true self space. It also helps making like decisions easier because you can just kind of ask for some of that wisdom or guidance from your true self. But what I love about kind of these two practices of sort of meditation and mindfulness, and then I also want to touch on Yoga Nidra because it speaks specifically to the true self. But meditation and mindfulness teaches us this intentional introspection. You are never going to find your true self looking outward. It isn't out there. It's inward. You need to look inward to find it. You'll never find it looking outward. So without learning the skill of intentional introspection of how do I gaze inward, you'll never be able to find it or get to know it. And so that's one piece. And then the practice of Yoga Nidra itself is like, if you're unfamiliar with it, Yoga Nidra, the term means yogic sleep. But the idea behind it, it's a longer practice, usually anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes, which, like, as Tarah said, isn't what everyone's looking for all the time. But it does, the idea is that it basically puts your body to sleep or your nervous system to sleep so that you can do deeper inner work. And it takes you through a conscious journey of the different layers. In the yoga space, we call them koshas, but it takes you through these different layers and it's supposed to bring you face to face with the true self, or in the yoga space, we call it Atman. But it's that soul space, that true self. So you're taking a conscious journey to that while you're doing Yoga Nidra as well. So I think it's interesting that we already spoke about that practice.
I know. And it's so funny because I'm like, okay, tonight, which one do I want to do? And I want to go do the Yoga Nidra one again. But I know I need to, like, that's just me. I find something I like and I'm like, I'm staying with it.
I mean, this whole practice that you're talking about is like at the heart of what we talk to couples about, which is that we spend so much time with our attention outside of ourselves, from nose forward. And we just react to all the stimulus that's coming at us. And a lot of it's sort of like unconscious adaptations. And the mindfulness practice is that U-turn of like coming back and sort of, especially Yoga Nidra, where it's like you're really shutting off all of the external stimulus and then having a process of like deeper and deeper and deeper. And so, what do people connect with? When they, especially somebody who's new, who's never done, who sits down and hears Tarah talking about Yoga Nidra and is like, okay, I'm going to go check out Kelly Smith. Like, what can they expect?
Well, it's hard for me to say exactly what you'll expect, but I'll say it usually goes one of two ways. You may not experience much the first time, and that's okay. That is okay. We're acquiring a new skill of being able to look inward, to work on quieting the mind. And for many of us, that's something that's going to happen over time. You'll probably experience just feeling a little bit better, right? Where you're just kind of like, oh, you know what? I do feel just even a little more relaxed, which that in and of itself, amazing. So if you try a Yoga Nidra practice or a 5-minute meditation and you feel like it was nice, but not life-changing, that is okay. We are acquiring a new skill over time. On the flip side, what some people find, like Rumi has this quote that I personally love, but it's quiet the mind and the soul shall speak. The reason that this resonates with me so much is because doesn't say quiet the mind, and the soul will say these nice, beautiful, sweet, whisper sweet nothings into your ear. But it speaks to this idea of if you can quiet the mind, you can quiet the stimulus and all of the external, because we do live in this very loud, stimulating, like productivity do obsessed space. And it's loud. It's loud, both like volume wise, it's loud, stimulus wise, it's loud, everything. It's just loud. And so when you start to quiet that, you can actually hear like the whispers of the soul. You can hear even things as simple as like, wow, I didn't realize I'm so tired. Or like, I just feel this particular feeling, or I'm really thinking about this thing. And if we're constantly just being bombarded in all of this stimulus all the time, this sensory information, it can be hard to actually listen to what your heart or your body or even your mind is trying to tell you. So for some people, they might feel like, oh, that was nice, but not necessarily life-changing yet, because we're going to be a slow build, right? Every time you turn inward, it gets a little bit easier. It gets a little bit more clear. You get a little more connected. Or on the flip side, you may find when you finally slow down, you're like, wow, my body or my mind or my heart, it has been trying to tell me a lot, and I just haven't been listening.
Why do you think, and this is me, because I have my little moments of like, oh, how do I describe it? Like I feel shiny, and EJ can even see it in the whites of my eyes. He's like, honey, you're glowing. I'm like, yeah, because I did some meditation and I did really good balance this weekend, and I was my best self as much as I could be. And then you lose it, and then you're not consistent, and then stuff happens. And I feel like so many people want this, and they're like, oh, that sounds really good, but they have a really hard time making it a consistent practice. Me, myself included, because then it's almost like, well, I want to prioritize myself, and I want to be good for me, and I want to like be that authentic self, but I've got too much to do. So then it's like it's like I'm self-sabotaging. Like how is, me looking at 20 emails more important than me spending 10 minutes first in meditation? But my brain will be like you said, that productivity. No way. I do not have time to meditate. I don't have time to do intentional introspection. I have got to answer these emails. Why, Kelly? Why?
Well, if it makes anyone feel better, including you, I sometimes do the same thing. Or I'll be like, you know what? I'm just so tired. I am just so tired. And sometimes meditation can feel like just one more thing that I need to check off my to-do list. And I'm so glad that you brought this up, because first I want to speak to the productivity piece, and then I want to talk to what you do basically when it feels like meditation's another thing to check off your to-do list. But when it comes to the productivity, it's two things. One, it's your priorities, right? We're just prioritizing the emails or I have ADHD, so sometimes I have a hard time responding to like text messages. So then it's like, oh, I urgently need to respond to this person. And it's like, I haven't texted them back for 3 days. It's like 5 more minutes, really going to make or break it. I don't know. But it's just our priorities and turning inward. Again, this is something that if you feel like whatever is happening in your life, and you hit the nail on the head, it's, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes if you're feeling ambitious. Why are the other things, why do they feel so much more important than what I consider to be like mental training or like mental care, like actual care for your brain? Because meditation is very much like resistance training that we would do for our muscles, or mobility training we would do for our joints and our stability. I live in the Midwest, so we're always worried about slips on the ice, right? So a lot of times I'll have students come into yoga classes and they're like, well, I want to do yoga because it's good for your stability, because, I want to be more steady on my feet in the ice. And so meditation is all of that, but for our brain. And why isn't that a priority for us? Why do the other things feel like a priority? Also, then, if anyone's listening to this and they're like, I don't know, I don't want to figure out why, I'll give you a little hack. Tell yourself, because this is true, tell yourself that if you do the meditation first, you're going to be more productive for the rest of the day, which like
I love that.
Yeah.
When we have that, like, I need to be productive, when we're stuck in that, do mindset, if what you need to tell yourself is meditation actually makes me more productive in the long term, do that. And then it'll get you to do the practice. And I think you'll find that over time, you'll get a little bit of this sort of gentle unraveling of that, almost addicted to productivity and doing mindset.
Can I share something with you? This is kind of vulnerable.
Okay.
But so normally, we're like by Friday, we're just like, we've like supervised so many people, therapy sessions for so many couples, our podcast being on other podcasts, like you name it, kids and sports and dinners and groceries. So normally on Friday, I'm like, bust out the wine, man. I just want to medicate. I want my nervous system to calm down, and I'm not intentional. So the reason why I chose to start doing hot yoga and then your meditations is because I don't want to have that pattern of like it's kind of like binging through work productivity and then numbing. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this first. And I found that like now when we go like pour a glass of wine and have Yahtzee, it's not because I'm medicating and trying to calm my nervous system. It's because I have taken care of myself. I did something in my body that feels really good. And then I did the intentional introspection. And now I'm not like mindlessly drinking just to calm the nervous system. Like that was so now I think of meditation and like yoga as this exciting thing that I'm going to do so I can actually have more balance and not dissociate from my stress. Does that make sense?
It does. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think that I think people struggle to start a mindfulness practice because it feels like they're not doing anything, and we're like in such a culture of like doing. Like I accomplished, I interacted with something, and I think that's one of the beauties of yoga is that it's sort of it's a bridge, to mindfulness. Is that it's movement. It feels like they're doing something. It might even sort of trick them that they're doing like an exercise class, but in reality, it's like it's bridging them into, addition by subtraction, by like simplify things, go inward in order to gain something. And I just think it's like it's super counterintuitive that it's useful.
Yes. I agree with that. And I think a lot of people start with yoga and then they evolve into meditation. And I think it's exactly what you said, EJ, about like, it allows you to move. It allows you to feel like you're doing something. I started there too. I started with yoga when I was a teenager for cross training for my sports because I was an athlete. I wasn't meditating. Are you kidding me? I would have been like, what? I was there because I was like, oh, well, this is supposed to reduce like my injuries and, I need more mobility.
Yeah.
And I was there for like a purpose, for a something to do for a specific reason. And that was like kind of, my foot in the door. But then I started to notice, I was like, okay, but you know what? Like, yeah, my body feels good, but also I started craving something deeper. And I think that even if you're doing and you're engaging in mindful movement, it still helps you kind of quiet the mind a little bit, and you'll still get to hear some of those whispers of the soul. You'll start getting a little bit more connected to yourself. You'll start even contemplating certain things. And the tools that you learn on the mat are useful outside of the mat as well. Like even after you roll up your mat and you walk out the door, like it's still helpful. And I think it can be a great place to start into just dabbling in like slowing down, being intentional. Because even when we move our bodies, we go outside for a walk, we put our headphones in, we listen to, this isn't to call all of the listeners out right now that are probably listening to us while they go on a walk. Like that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when do we just like move without a device and just be present?
So I think that's a great like entry point for us to go deeper into that authentic self, right? And because we're saying that meditation is a tool that can help you connect with that part of yourself that you sort of lose, right? And so let's define that. Like as far as you see it, Kelly, is like, what is the authentic self that someone would be pursuing or discovering?
It is, to me, I'm so glad you asked. This is something I could talk about all day long because I feel so passionately about it. And it's something, to me, it's really that essence. Like, again, I think about that person that you came into this world. Again, even if you don't have kids, for me, the easiest example is like just a kid, one of those kids that you just see, they're kind of a free spirit. And you're like, that kid, it's almost always like a toddler that we can think of because they really are like truly their most authentic selves. But it's like that kid, you can see it with your own eyes. Like someone who is uninhibited by like what people think or what the world thinks you should be. And like, they're just who they are. It's easy to see it in kids. When we see it in adults, it is also truly magnetic. And I think it's so magnetic because it's something that we all desire. And it's incredibly beautiful. So for me, that true self is reconnecting with that. Like, it sounds so big to say connecting with that. Who am I really? But that is what it is. And it doesn't have to be big and scary. I think of connecting to the true self as something that's honestly kind of fun. I think of it as like dating yourself in a way. And especially when you feel disconnected from that space, it's almost like going on a first date. And this is what I'll tell people. If they're like, I want to connect with my true self, how do I start? You almost have to treat it sort of like a first date. Like figure out like, well, I don't know, what do you like? Like ask yourself those kind of questions that you would ask someone on a first date, or like, I don't know, what do you like to do for fun? But try to just quiet the mind, maybe take a deep breath, ask yourself like, what do I actually like to do for fun? Not, whatever, pickleball because it's part of the, I don't know, because my neighbors are doing it
Modern
and they asked
pop
me to join.
culture, like, yeah.
Yeah, or whatever. Like, what do I actually like? And you can just start there with like dating yourself. And then it's like, you know what I like to do? I really enjoy reading, but I've been so busy. I haven't picked up a book in 4 years. And like, what a beautiful place to start. Be like, I'm going to pick up a book because it makes me, my true self, feel happy.
It reminds me of, do you know that movie, The Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts? When she liked all the eggs because the guys liked all the eggs. Oh, I liked them poached. I liked them scrambled. And then she broke up with Richard Gere and she finally started testing out which egg she liked the best. I can't remember which one it was. I remember I found that very empowering. Like, oh yeah, because we tend to like try to be what others want us to be. And then we don't even know. I love that idea of like a self-assessment tool piece, dating yourself.
Well, I think it's also like, it's something that you and I have struggled with and identified in these last couple of years is, I think part of authentic self, when you talk about that toddler, is like joy. What really brings me like where I just like, joy for me is like this like sort of glowingness inside. And we've identified like, man, like where is our joy?
We lost
like
our
glow. And it's that do mentality where there's like no room for it. And that's that gets heavy after a while.
Well, I also think hearing like news and social media and it's almost like, is that good for you? Because it's like you hear so much negative, scary, sad things out there. It's like, how is that going to produce joy? But you also want to be in the know. Yeah, there's just so many things out there, Kelly, that go ahead.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about that lately, as I've been thinking about and hearing a lot about that particular topic of like, there's so much going on. It's big. Like the world feels really big and scary. I mean, the world is really big and scary. I shouldn't say it feels like it. Like there's a lot going on. Yeah. And what I've come to in my own heart is that just like I can have intentional introspection, I can have intentional consumption of these things. I do think there is a way to find a balance within yourself, because I do not think you should just bury your head in the sand. And although it's tempting, I'm like, should I just move to Nova Scotia and like live off the land and have the quiet, simple life amongst the trees and become disconnected and just, meditate and run through the forest with my kids? That does feel tempting. There are times I, fantasize about this, but I think there's a way to be plugged in and informed intentionally and not just spiraling. And because what happens in our brain, I know you guys know this, but for any listeners, what happens in your brain, your amygdala responds to the part of the brain that activates fight or flight. It responds to perceived threats. And that could be, I'm going for a hike and a bear crosses my path, and I'm going to kick into fight or flight because that's a life-threatening thing in front of me. Our brains, we know, register watching something distressing on the news in the exact same way that we would register that bear. And so when we're hearing something distressing, we're seeing it, when we're thinking about it constantly, it's not good for us emotionally. And it starts to change our brain over time. And it makes our amygdala bigger and more reactive over time. So I think it is okay to find a balance to intentionally consume what you need to consume to be informed, and also intentionally, you're not changing anything by just being glued to, doom scrolling all day long. You're not engaging in anything. You're not able to change. You're not able to help anyone from that. You're only hurting yourself. And I think there's a way to do both, to be informed and to, whatever you feel strongly about, and like actually going out and doing what I call inspired action, right? And actually doing things to help. And you really can't do that if you're just doom scrolling all day long.
I remember I started, because EJ would be like, why do you read the news at night or watch Dateline?
We'd be like going to bed and she's like, did you know that 7,000 people died in Uruguay today? I'm like, yeah, but like, why are you reading that right before you go to bed?
Can I tell you what I started doing now? I now Google good news. And there's like a couple papers or news sites that show all good news about like kids doing these amazing things for animals or other kids. And so I still look at the other news, but I now, before I go to bed, I look at good news, and it's so much nicer, Kelly. I had no idea how much, I want to see the bad news. I do. I'm like, it's my only hour, but I don't, because I know it's not good for me. Intentional consumption. I love that term. I do.
I mean, something that popped up for me when you were saying, when you were talking about that intentional consumption and just how we want to be plugged in. We have jobs and we are raising our families. It's amazing though, with such a small amount of time focused on meditation or yoga, what a deep impact it can make. That we have to work like 6-8+ hours a day to kind of get it done.
Yeah.
That we can spend 10 minutes a day and it has such a huge effect. And why is that? Like, why can such a small amount of time have such a big impact?
Part of it is because of the brain. And we know that meditation helps to, again, quiet those parts of the brain, like the amygdala that we've been, firing all day long. It helps to kind of reverse some of that. Our brain is incredible. Like, it is amazing how our brain works, how it can change over time. Also, how quickly it reacts. If you think about it, our brain is designed to react immediately. The brain is what, if I were to, touch a hot stove, my brain has already registered like, oh, danger, hot, pulled the hand away before I've even registered like, ouch, that was hot. It's like my brain has already just done it. And so that's a piece of it, is the way that the brain is designed is that it does move really quickly. And with that, when you are meditating and you're quieting the mind, but also you're changing the brain pattern. So the amygdala begins to deactivate, and we get more of a focused activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain right behind your forehead, which has to do with like emotion regulation, some executive functioning, and then like memory, concentration. So it actually changes the pattern in your brain as to like what parts are lighting up and which ones are getting quieter. And so it's helping to reverse what we've been doing all day long, which is great. But I also think that it's the thing. It's like we do crave it all day. We need it. And it's not taxing. It's not stimulating. It's like, I think of it as like the Instapot, right? You have this like pressure cooker, and it's all day. It's just like pressure, 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 pressure. Then there's that little valve you can open, and it's like, and it just kind of lets that pressure go. Yeah. And meditation, whether you're doing it morning or night or middle of the day, but like our brains are kind of building up that pressure. Our bodies, our lives, it's kind of building up that pressure. So when you finally open up that valve and you slow down, you try to meditate, it's all just like, it's like it just lets it go.
which though a lot of people, instead of doing it that way, right, will use medicators to turn it off, which then takes them farther from themselves.
They're not really letting out the pressure. They're just suppressing it. And then that's why there's like the whole anxiety of like, oh, I suppressed all my anxiety for 6 hours of drinking. And then I wake up the next day and it's like, it's back through the roof.
Well, and now, Kelly, with like so much research out there, it's like you would think we'd all be hooked. Could you imagine if every person in this world did a meditation every single day? I would watch the news all the time.
Yeah, I think.
But even with all that research, with all that research out there, it's still like we still are these like some of us are just resistant individuals for whatever reason. And I just think the more we can put it out there, the importance of it and the benefits of it, actually being able to be your authentic self and being self-led, having a relationship that feels connected and awesome even during stressful times, which it is.
So let's wrap it back then to our audience and relationships. So we talk about mindful yoga and mindfulness as tools to, one, just take care of ourselves, find quiet, but then also more deeply connect with our more authentic self and understand ourselves and understand our needs and wants. And so what does that offer then in relationship as far as you see it, Kelly?
One, it helps to soften the edges. I think of softening the edges as like when you're in a relationship and maybe things are, high intensity at the moment. And, you feel like it's kind of just like all elbows in there. And what I mean by that is like when you're feeling reactive, when you're feeling kind of heated, it's like, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate, but when you just feel like you're either walking on eggshells or again, even in your relationship, it's like that Instapot where it's just like pressure, 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 building. And so it helps to soften the edges, which is just, that is just going to help, period. Think about if your relationship right now feels like a pressure cooker. What if even one of you could open up that valve and alleviate some of the pressure? That's going to help, period. The other thing that I think is so crucial for relationships is that the better you get to know yourself, the better you can communicate what you want, what you need, because right now you may not actually know what you want. And this isn't me to say like, if you're saying, I don't like the way you speak to me, maybe that's not actually true. You just don't know your true self. But maybe some of these underlying things, like maybe you're feeling a little bit unhappy because you don't know what actually makes you happy. And so how can you make these changes, or how can you know what to communicate, or how can you always know exactly what to ask for if you don't know what's happening within you? And I think that when someone has the courage to be their most authentic self, it gives the others around them the permission to do the same. And I think it can really soften into the relationship, is that it just takes that one person to be like, like I said, to have the courage to be your most authentic self, that then invites your partner to also be their most authentic self, or to start dabbling in that too. And like, what a beautiful place to be. Because something we were talking about even before we hopped on, as I said, a lot of people ask me, what if I don't like my true self? Or what if my partner doesn't like my true self? And of course, there's always a small risk. Believe me, you will like your true self. You will, because it's returning home to you. So if anyone's saying, what if I don't like what I find? There'll be bumps along the way. There'll be a period where you're like, I've been doing something that isn't fulfilling to me. Like, your eyes will be open to how you've been living in a disconnected way. But the more connected you are to yourself, truly only the happier you become. There is always a risk that if you change as a person, that might not be the person that your partner signed up to be with. There's always that risk, but that's with any kind of a change. If you decide that you no longer, if you want to start living a sober lifestyle, and that's something that, for whatever reason isn't in alignment with your partner, there's always a risk of that. I think it's a small risk, because I do think the more we're connected with our true selves, the more beautiful we become and the more open we become. And that invites our partners to do the same. And in the end, you'll actually become more connected.
Well, and the risk of not doing that is living unhappy with unmet needs until you die.
Living a lie.
That's way more of a risk to me.
Well, the reason we asked you to come back Kelly, was that the first time we talked to you, it was just like we opened up this like cornucopia of information that is just like super compelling and is so useful to people, and you articulate it in such like a, just an accessible way for people. So,
Very
once
realistic.
again, we're sort of at the end, but we're like, gosh, there could be so much more. So
Can Kelly just be in the households of everybody in the world?
yeah, she's working on it.
Oh my
Your
gosh.
mindfulness meditation. I mean, so many people listen to that. That's incredible. So if you're out there and you're like, yeah, like what you guys are talking about really is something I crave. I know I need mindful minutes, right?
Yeah, mindful in minutes.
Mindful in minutes.
Mindful in minutes. Like just pop that into Spotify, into your Apple podcast player, and check it out, because there are a lot of people who are loving it.
And that's what gives me hope. Like for you to be in the 0.5% top podcast in mindfulness and all, that means people are listening.
Yeah.
Right. And so that just gives me hope that people want this. They need the support and resources in getting there, because it can feel like Kelly said, like another task. But if we look at it in an exciting way, like I'm excited for my meditation tonight, right? Have this narrative around it, then it's not daunting. It's like, oh, I can be more productive if I do this 10-minute meditation first. Cool.
So we'll toss that into our show notes. So if you haven't checked Kelly out yet, please do. Thank you, Kelly. Like we really appreciate your willingness to offer your time and be with us. It's been a pleasure both times we spoke with you.
And if our listeners could just feel your bubbly, authentic self spirit from even on a TV screen, you guys would know she truly does live in what she teaches. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you guys. That's so sweet. I've had just the best time chatting with you guys. Every time we're together, I feel like you guys are just a ray of sunshine in my life. So thanks for chatting about the things I love and being open to my wacky ideas sometimes.
Well, thanks for creating, right, like meditations that are chewable and bite size and even longer ones, so that we can feel like, oh, I can do this. Like that's the biggest piece. It's doable.
Well, and thank you, everyone who's out there, either watching, listening. We appreciate you being a part of our community. Please throw us out a like, review our show, send us an email, info@relationship.renovation.com. Tell us what you think about mindfulness and the ways that it's helped you, or what your struggles may have been, or how it's affected your relationship. We love to hear from you. Thank you for being a part of our show.
And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.